All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting edition of Two Men in Black and White, an honest conversation. I'm joined by my partner in crime, Brock and Ellis. Brock joins us from right outside New York City. I'm located right outside the dirty ATL shouting. All right, Brock, breaking news as we come on this 5 o'clock hour East Coast time. The Mad King has just introduced 25% tariffs. He's got members of the UAW there with him, supporting Donald Trump's policies. How in God's name do the United Auto Workers send 20 of their finest to speak for these proposals in this ridiculous policy, like it's not a tax on American auto buyers?
I didn't see those numbers. I watched the presentation, so I didn't see that. I mean, maybe they've somehow been, have bought into the fact that it's going to bring more jobs back to the U.S. and in aggregate is going to be good for the auto workers. I
Hmm.
mean, it's highly unlikely. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see how markets respond tomorrow morning. It has to be negative because no one's ever, instituted tariffs along these lines. And it's really going to close down international markets for so many of our companies when these other countries match the tariffs. So like it's all going to be what we're only going to really sell domestically now. So it's just an internal game. It's like it's 1930s isolationism.
Right.
Economic isolationism in 2025 seems like a horrible bet. I mean, it's the sad reality is that like you don't know till later down the road, whether this quote gambit works. But like the problem is Trump doesn't understand necessarily what he's doing. He just
Exactly.
thinks he's in a fight or he's fighting everyone's an enemy. And this is his malignant narcissism coming out. Everyone's an enemy. We got to fight everyone. We're aggrieved. We're being screwed.
Right.
So we're now fighting. We're in essence fighting the world because the aggrievedness of the American is now being taken global. We've gotten screwed by everyone, and now we have to sort of raise, their costs to interact with us. It's
Right.
just so unlikely to work. It's so likely to bring on a recession, potentially depression. And but he's a moron. He doesn't
Right.
really understand. He doesn't care or understand what he's doing.
Yeah, Brock, this is your wheelhouse. So help us here. That's what the experts were saying, right? Like yourself, recession, maybe even depression. When will we start seeing signs that we could be headed to recession territory or even depression territory?
Quickly, very quickly, because as soon as the consumer gets concerned, consumers are like 2/3 of the economy. So consumers pull back, companies are going to see it right away. I would argue it's already happening, right?
Mm, mm,
Travel's down, travel industry is already talking about lower numbers. Retail has ticked down, consumer confidence has ticked down. So all these metrics that are the early indicators of how the numbers roll out are already moving in the wrong direction. So we're moving directionally negative without just on Trump talking about these tariffs. Companies are going to react right away. Prices are going to be changing tomorrow morning because you got to raise your prices if your component costs are going to go up immediately. And you got to start thinking ahead. So a lot of companies had already start to raise. The
right.
funniest part of Trump's whole commentary was that he was fucking lying to us. Boldface as usual. He's saying the price of gas is down. It's not. And he's saying the price of eggs is down. We know it's not. He was literally just lying about the most basic pricing factors, the things that we roll by gas stations every day. We see those prices on there. They're not fucking down. But he literally thinks he can lie his way through anything. And if he just says that the American people are going to buy it hook, line, and sinker and go, yeah, Trump brought the price of eggs down. I think he said 50%. I got to go back to the tape, right?
Gotta go.
$1 a dozen. Oh, we're supposed to believe they used to be $22 a dozen. No, they went up during Biden. They've continued to go up, but he thinks he can lie about the most basic facts.
But let's talk about Joe Biden for a moment, and then we got to get to Cory Booker's legendary stance because he was so impressive and made so much sense for so long. It was incredibly laudable. All right, but before we get to that, remind me about Joe Biden's economy and where it came from to the heights that he took it to. Because no one in their right mind thought we'd recover as quickly, as impressively as we did. Because remember, on January 20th, we were the envy of the world when it comes to our economy. So, why did we need this short term suffering? Why do we need these tariffs? It's obvious he's got a to do list and was obviously, to me anyway, instructed by someone to destroy America.
So look, every economy tanked due to COVID, right? So Biden had walked into a domestic economy and a global economy that had tanked. Every country had to figure out how they were going to respond to it, right? The U.S. was very aggressive in terms of, in essence, throwing a lot of money at the problem. Same
Sure.
as we did after the financial crash of 07 or 08, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's the U.S. playbook. So we gave people, we did PPP, we extended unemployment benefits and layered some money on top of it. In essence, we put a lot of money into circulation and
Right.
sort of spent our way out of it. The
Right.
downside of doing that, and many economists along the way said, hey, if you do this, you're going to trigger inflation. There's too much money's going to be sloshing around. And guess what? Yeah, we probably didn't do it absolutely perfect to the dollar. So maybe overshot a bit, threw too much money into the economy, got the best economic recovery in the world, but inflation came along with it. And inflation came along globally because in the build back, almost every country mimicked what the US did. So inflation came along globally. So the Republicans' MAGA world hammered on inflation and convinced people that because inflation was up, their economy sucked. Even though we had the best gross domestic product growth in the world and the best recovery in the world, MAGA messaged and bamboozled the public into thinking because egg prices and gas prices were up, their economy sucked and was mismanaged.
Right.
And they messaged that, and all the messages that came from the left, the Biden and then Harris side of the equation, weren't able to offset that. If you believe people voted on economics, which I do not.
That.
To me, that
Nope.
was the smokescreen, and people were
Yeah.
really voting for racism and turning back the clock to a white power America. And that's why Trump won the white vote, and it overweighed the minority votes. He did not win, and he eked out another victory, playing into our most base concerns.
Yep. And so let's talk about the opposite of action, which is inaction. Trump is trying to bully the Republican senators into not taking any action that would overturn his power to weigh in on these tariffs. So he wants to tell these guys, and he's going to tell them, hey, I'll primary you. I will make life hell for you. I will sick my maggots on you. I will make your life a living hell if you take away my power to institute these tariffs. How's this going to play out?
Look, if they can't man up, they shouldn't have the fucking job. I say this over and over. Okay, so it's so important for them to have a Senate seat so they get primaried. Okay, maybe they could lose it. They don't have a stance they can fight on, or having that job is so important to them that they'd rather toe the line and do shit that they know is not in the best interest of the country, so that they can still have the job. That's the statement they're making. It's the antithesis of civil service or any kind of political courage, as we talked about several weeks ago. So, okay, so you're that easy to get bullied. That's who you are as a human being. Well, I guess that's where, a lot of the law firms have gone and corporate America has gone. So yeah, a lot of people are bullyable. So they'll probably roll along with whatever Trump says, because God forbid he sends a negative tweet.
Yeah. Well, and like you say, Brock, this is ridiculous. If you don't have the courage, you shouldn't have the job. And like I always say, when white America catches a cold, black America gets pneumonia. Right? So I am really, really concerned about what happens to all the gains that black Americans have made this first 25 years of the 2000s, right? Because we saw a ton of African American wealth obtained through the tech field, right? Through technology, through real estate, through entrepreneurship in general, and through the small business administration and the MBE programs. And I'm worried that all those gains for Black families all over America are gonna be wiped out. You know why, Brock? Because we haven't had a chance to build up two or three or four generations of wealth. So we're unable to protect it. And when these kinds of events happen, just like you saw in '07 and '08, Black families are still recovering from '07 and '08. Trust me, still recovering because we lose our most valuable asset, our home, right? When we run out of savings, when we run out of stocks and bonds and 401k money to pay that mortgage, we end up losing it. And that's why the Black wealth, when you compare it to white wealth, is so, fractioned.
Here's
And
let me throw this stat at you. Just saw it today. In the last 25 years, the income inequality gap between white and black has gone in the direction of white America, another $50,000 per household.
see,
50 grand in the last 25 years, almost all of it coming because of real estate, because whites own more homes. Homes, the asset that has grown the most over that time period. Therefore, white America has increased the gap yet again on Black America, as well as I'm sure stock ownership had a play as well, because the market's a big rally. But then Black families are going to get crushed because the price of everyday items is going to go up.
up.
And
Right.
therefore, your day-to-day cost of living. So the closer you are to not having a cushion in your life, the worse off you're going to be. So that's going to be maybe rural white poor, and people of color are going to get hit much worse than comfortable white America, which is going to complain that, the cost, like I need to buy a new TV.
Right.
Get the sound on my TV right now, right? Just watching the games. I don't need to hear the announcers anyway, right? But I know it's going to be up, 20, 25%, maybe starting tomorrow
Easy.
with the new tariff.
Yes.
Yeah. But
Yes.
so what? It's not going to break my back, right? Because I'm
Right.
comfortable white America. But
Right.
the price of food, the price of heating oil, right? The price of the credit card rates, all these things that are chip away at people's wealth and ability to survive at the lower ends of the economic spectrum. There's going to be more people in dire straits. That's just what we've laid out there, and now we're going to have a tax cut that's going to benefit the wealthy. It's almost fucking comical.
It is. It is. And think about middle white America too, and that guy in Iowa, right, who might have a farm, that guy who might work at an auto plant up in Michigan who voted for this fucking clown, right? Like, how are they gonna make it when they stop producing cars? Brock, all of our key performance indicators for household savings. Remember, that's gotten smaller and smaller as things have increased in price, right? So nobody has a cushion anymore from the very wealthy on down, right? It's gonna hit us all.
And
Some
then
and some harder.
Yep. And once unemployment ticks up, as you know, because our insurance is so tethered to health insurance is so tethered to
Yep.
jobs. Yeah, you can stay on Cobra for a few months while you're scratching and clawing. Then that goes away. Then you're out.
You're
You're
screwed.
out there.
Ass out in America.
Your healthcare costs end up going up, and that chips away. And everyone in America has healthcare costs. Everyone's on some kind of drug, right? Like,
Right?
and it's
And
almost
getting worse.
it's unavoidable. So like we don't even like to talk economics that much, right? We don't, we've tried to stay on sort of the the living room issues, because there was so much talk about the kitchen table issues. But
Right.
Trump's economic foolery may get to more people again to realize, more American citizens, more MAGA, more complacent white left leaning people who are just not inspired to get off their ass, that are just watching the action going, wow, this doesn't feel good, right? But now it's going to be that direct impact that we keep talking about, the selfish American needs to get inspired, because there's going to be more direct impact as immediately.
which
We
is
might not see the recessionary numbers, right? Those are quarterly numbers, right? And Q1's in the books. So you're not going to see, to get an official recession, you have to have 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, right? That takes you all the
right,
way into like October before you get the data, right? So
right,
we're going to know we're
right.
in a recession before the economists are, officially,
Announcing, right, right.
informed.
Right. But in the meantime, everyday Americans are struggling to make ends meet, struggling to get to and from work, right? Struggling with those. What's the average car note now? $750. I mean, like, who drives that car? Like, how is that the average?
And parts are going to go up. Your car breaks down, it's going to cost you more, right? Every little thing like that, tires, you name it, right? Everything's going to be more expensive in life.
Yep. And the billionaires are going to make more money off of our suffering, just like they did during COVID,
The
right?
question is, will the companies be able to raise prices? They're gonna immediately raise prices. So sometimes companies like shit like this because they can raise prices and then never lower them, right?
Exactly.
But I just feel like demand is going to decline so much that they're going to get hurt way before that higher prices benefit them. Like they're going to take short-term pain. And it's just been amazing how quiet the business community has been as they've seen this coming down the road. I mean, this is so bad for someone like Apple, right? Right.
Right.
So they kept going to the Oval Office trying to like suck up to Trump. But like this is terrible for a lot of the companies
I know it.
that actually make shit.
Right. Right.
Maybe not for Facebook or even Amazon's going to feel it because people are going to buy less shit. So all
Right.
these people that funded Trump and thought that they were playing him, kind of playing him and kissing his ass and getting a benefit. This is going to get to everyone. Yes, it's going to hurt Black America and lower income America much worse. But this is going to hit everyone, every business, every investor, every 401k. Like I don't see how this just doesn't tip sentiment even more against Trump. Not that he gives a shit, because he
Right.
doesn't have an election for 3.5 years, and he thinks he can skate.
Yeah. And that's the ridiculous part. All right, enough about him because he's putting me on a downer. We got April 5th coming up. We've got thousands and thousands of people registered through indivisible.org, handsoff.org. I mean, there are grassroots operations all over America getting ready to protest on Saturday. I think you're going to be a very happy man when you get home from New York City and you turn on the television and you see protest after protest in red and blue districts, all about the Mad King and the Department of Greed and Evil. And out of this is born a new voice, a voice that we've been waiting for, that we've been calling for. Cory Booker with a record stand on the Senate floor, and he touched on so many issues. But Brock, what's the issue that you think he hit it out of the park on?
Okay, before I get to that, 2 interesting tidbits. One is Frank Luntz, who's that big GOP pollster, who's
Yeah,
always on, and he thinks it's all about what words people use, and like he does a lot of, focus groups, this and that. He was saying today he thinks that this catapults Booker right to the top of the list for
saw that.
2028 presidential candidates. The
Right,
second thing is someone on Blue Sky pinged me when I was expressing some skepticism of how much action Booker may really inspired. I'm like, let's see, I hope. Someone told me that they thought that Cory Booker started a revolution yesterday. And
I
I was
saw that.
like,
I
really?
saw that.
Person talk about anecdotal, but I'm like, wow, were there people that really came away with that impact?
Yes.
So I don't know, Mark. I don't even know how to answer your question. Back to the question. After 20, and I was wrong yesterday. I should have realized that he wanted to go past Strom Thurmond, that he wouldn't stop at
Exactly.
24 hours, that after you go 24 hours, you're going 25 and a half because you're not letting that fucking segregationist,
Right.
still have the
Racist.
record, right?
Right.
So kind of, I was thinking he was trying to go past the news cycle, but obviously he had that in the back of his head is like, I'm
No
fucking
doubt.
knocking Strom Thurmond out of the box,
No
right?
doubt.
But I don't know. After 26 hours, I don't know what to say. What resonated the most, and maybe I worry that he said so many things that there's no soundbite necessarily that came out of it, except that what they say. Sometimes people don't remember what you say, but they remember how you make them
Feel.
feel, and it's almost like people might not remember what Cory Booker said yesterday, but
Right.
I get the sense that people are going to remember how it felt and how they felt about what he did and
Right.
maybe what it should make them think about and should inspire them to do. I'm hoping that's kind of the takeaway, that it was just like, okay, because he does it with such good nature
Right.
and he's so smart and he's just such a good
So
guy and optimistic, like glass is half full kind of guy,
yeah.
that like you just get the feel that like shit, maybe America isn't as bad as like someone like me thinks it is, you know. What's Corey seeing that? What's Corey seeing that I don't see? You know, why don't I feel a little more optimistic? Because he kind of sees a vision, has a vision of a better future.
But
Why do
that's a
I
great
feel like
point.
I'm in a dark tunnel and I don't see the light at the end of it?
But that's a great point because, I remember when uh, Kamala and Cory were cutting up Brett Kavanaugh during the Supreme Court hearings, right? And I mean, Cory was masterful, as was Kamala. But yesterday, again, he made us feel like, okay, there are people that give a shit, right? Just like me. And he felt like he was talking to each and every one of us because not only was he pointing out the fuckery that's going on, he also pointed out that we have to do something too. And we have to be responsible for saving our democracy too. It can't just fall on the elected leaders, right? There's got to be each of us supporting each other's efforts. As we get out in the streets, he will protest from the legislative floor, right? As he protests from the legislative floor, we get out in the streets. And that's what it has to be, right? Whether it's letter writing, emailing, calling your congressman, calling your senators, blowing up the phones, phone banking, knocking on doors, whatever it is, we've all got to support each other. And speaking of phone banking, we got 1 out of 3.
Yeah. In baseball, back
1 out of 3.
333 would lead the league in Major League Baseball.
Hall of
But
numbers.
but I felt like maybe we hit a double
Right.
and not we didn't a home run. But yeah, we got the important one, which was Wisconsin, because it basically right, it beat Elon head to head, right? So it was a good win because of the money thrown at it. It shows you can win. Money doesn't always win. Ideas can win. It
Right.
also, prevents some shitty gerrymandering and a bunch of laws getting enacted that would just hurt people. So that was the best win of them all. Yes, we got significant outperformance in both Florida districts, but my days of celebrating losses are over. It's like we celebrated the midterms because the Dems outperformed in the midterms. Well, we lost the House. So, like, what does the outperformance mean? It hasn't meant shit. Haven't
Right.
been able to block a single action. So, like, I don't want to be on the side on the side of the ledger that celebrates good losses and has these moral victories. Like the days of moral victories are over.
Long.
Republicans won 2 yesterday, and that
Right.
hurts and that sucks. That
Right.
like I get it. They were both long shots, but Jesus Christ, you got to win a tough game once in a while.
Right. Right.
There were 2 fucking losses.
And unlike Wisconsin, decency lost in those 2 races in Florida. Right? We're still talking about decency here. Remember where Florida is. Florida was don't say gay, right? Banning books, right? Getting rid of diversity, right? Underfunding HBCUs, right? This is Florida, getting rid of books in classrooms, getting rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion, shutting down, making Disney's life difficult through legislation, right? Disney is like a jewel, one of the jewels of the world. People come from all over the world. That's the lifeblood of Orlando. Are you freaking kidding me? I mean, this is still Florida. Where is the decency? Like,
Well, look,
that's
I
what
don't know. I don't know if anything was particularly learned about those 2 races, like whether the candidates mattered or made a difference. I feel like uh, Valamont in Gates's district maybe overperformed a little bit more, I think, but she had more veterans in her district, and maybe she should have because the veterans should be going against Gates. And I didn't dig super deep into the candidates, right? But I do worry that the Jason Crow, Alyssa Slotkin model, the guy in Minnesota who's running the DNC have this. We need to bring like these moderate
Yes.
moderates to the table because America can't handle anyone who's like a progressive
Right.
thinker in any competitive district. So it's going to be very generic, vanilla, white candidates. I mean, a
Right.
lot of them are going to have military backgrounds because Crow thinks that's the way to go, and some other people. They got to have our military chops. You're going to see a lot of ex-military running out there. But both of them, I just saw in their blurbs, were both talking about like reaching across the aisle and all that, like
To
working
what?
with Democrats. Like, we don't, to me, that depresses the base. Like, I'm bummed out when I see that. I don't want to hear about that as your calling card. That your
Right.
calling card is going to be playing this game to try to pull people away from MAGA and Trump and peel them off. They're not coming. They're
It
afraid.
doesn't work.
They ain't doing it. They're worried about being primaried. They're not coming. There are no moderate Republicans. They're all fucking MAGA.
Right.
Reaching across
Period.
the aisle is not the game. Fucking punching them in the nose and beating them
game.
into submission is the game. Play to
Absolutely.
the base and get big turnout. Stop trying to peel off the white guys in the diner. So,
Right. It ain't happening.
yeah, so I don't know the gap closed because of anything the candidates did, but I just hate that messaging. I'm just not there for it.
It's awful. Like, I mean, that was Schumer's messaging. That comes from Schumer. That's Chuck Schumer. Let's work together. Right? We saw it.
Those
And-
days
and-
are so fucking over. Show
Yeah.
me one thing where they're
He's
probably
done.
given an inch. They haven't given an inch on anything. They didn't vote it down a
And
single.
they never do.
They're
Never
so
do.
afraid Trump's going to mention their name at a press conference like today that
Right.
they're just all going in line, right?
Right.
If I have to see
You're
fucking Mike
skipping-
Lawler in Westchester again, pretending like he's like a middle moderate and he's not MAGA, you are MAGA. If you're still in the party, you're MAGA and you're towing the line. So I want Democrats that are fighting, not trying to reaching out a hand right now.
Exactly. There is no hand to reach for.
There's no hand to reach for. No one cares on the other side.
They don't have any decency. They don't care, and they're in it for the money. I mean, that's all you can say.
Project 2025. This is like Germany 1935. You weren't trying to find common ground with the Nazis. Either you're winning or you're losing. We're not, I don't care that America's divided right now.
No.
Okay, we're in a soft civil war that may get violent, but that's where we are. No one was reaching across the aisle to the Dixie South saying, hey, where can we find common ground on slavery, right?
Right.
Like, and sometimes you're just in a fight, and we're in a fight.
Right.
And stop bringing a butter knife and stop bringing a little soft peddling message to your white communities because you're so worried about, mentioning anything that's, anything that's a social issue. So they stayed with the kitchen table issues and no one messaged anything in the living room. And they didn't even talk about women's gender equality. Like they wouldn't touch anything.
Yeah. And I don't know like what has to be done in order to get them to move further left.
Maybe losing, but like those two, since we expected to lose anyway, maybe that didn't work.
Matter.
Guess what? That fucking judicial woman in Wisconsin's pretty damn progressive, right?
Yes.
She's out quoting Thurgood Marshall in her acceptance speech, right?
Yep.
Spitting on Musk and his fucking side of the ledger.
Ridiculing him.
She didn't middle of the road it.
Nope.
So, I don't know why the middle of the road. Look at where the energy is. AOC and Bernie are out there. They're not middle of the roading it. Waltz and Beto aren't middle of the roading it. Elizabeth Warren, not middle of the roading it. Just Jasmine Crockett, not middle of the roading it. And you know what? Booker, as nice a guy as he is, and as much even in the 6 hours that I watched, he had some overtures of talking about some things that he had worked on with Republicans. He had some olive branches out there for them, but that message was not middle of the road yesterday.
Ooh, nowhere near. Nowhere near. And what I liked about Booker is that he appealed to the human decency in the folks on the left, right? We are still decent human beings, and we can still fight back against this MAGA nonsense, right? Because this is affecting all of us. right? And if it doesn't affect us, it affects our neighbor, right? Which affects all of us in our communities. So, his message to me was spot on. I don't mind him talking about his history, but as he mentioned in the outset, these are not normal times and not normal days, and we don't need to be acting like they're normal times and normal days.
You know what else he did that was great? Is when the other senators kind of came around to join him, which I
Right.
think happened like at, hour 18,
You're
but
right.
I think one of them stayed overnight with him, but each one stood up and asked him questions, right? So he was like, I'll answer the question, but I won't yield the microphone, or whatever the quote was he had to say each time when he'd allow. But then he would talk about the personal connection that he had with that specific senator, and something they had worked on together, or something anecdotal about them as a person
Right.
that connected them, whether it was Jackie Rosen being like the Jewish mother, whether it was things he'd work on with Adam Weiss, with Duckworth talking about John McCain, and whether it was, I'm trying to think of the people that I saw, Chris Coons, they were talking about, but everyone, they came up one after the other, and he started with the connection point that he had with that person and what he appreciated about them
Yep.
before he answered the questions. And it was just like, it was just textbook, right? It
It
was just
really was.
absolutely classic about human connection and empathy, but yet also, not
Toughness.
shying away from what needed to be said. It really was a masterclass from Cory Booker. It'll be talked about for the ages, and I think he deserves to be already looked at as a presidential candidate. I had always downplayed him because I thought he was too nice a guy to become president, but maybe not. Maybe he's
Yep.
pissed off enough, or is kind of
So
learning curve.
remember Brock's 2004 speech at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago? I mean, it was that kind of impact, I felt. It was a different kind of impact, but it was very, very monumental in terms of where it's going to be remembered in our political discourse. He may be the firebrand we're looking for, because he does bring that sense of compassion and empathy along with the fire. And now we know for certain he's engaged in the fight.
In the gravitas, right? He's been there for a while,
Tons of
right? We've seen him, we know, you can't pull that Kamala bullshit. She's not prepared to be president or not qualified. This and that with Booker. Can't say that. Been around the Senate forever, right? And us men love him because he was an athlete, right? And he was a football player. So he's got those chops where he can, like, he doesn't have to talk to us because we're already sort of like him from the get-go, right? He got.
exactly. And if you look at his background and bio, he very closely resembles Gerald Ford. If you looked at the two backgrounds, I mean, Gerald Ford, University of Michigan football player, attorney, statesman, gravitas. I mean, Cory Booker, very, very. I know Stanford Cardinal all over the country are ringing the bell proudly.
They love him. Yeah, they love him, as they
Oh
should.
yeah,
So,
they.
but do you think that Cory Booker's speech is going to get extra people out on the street on
Yes,
Saturday? You think it did? You think
I think so.
he's like a force multiplier, that he has helped to pile on? Because that's what I'm hoping is, like, shit, if Cory Booker can stand up for 26 hours and do that speech to try to get the attention of us sitting on our couches so that we'll get out there on Saturday and do something uncomfortable,
Right.
then, then he served his purpose for the moment, right? He met the moment.
Yep. And that's what we were looking for. Somebody to meet the moment, match the energy from the right. And
And
here's the other thing I thought, Brock, yesterday, watching him. He looks young enough to connect with young people.
yeah, he
He
looks
might,
young.
he
He,
might be eligible for the Golden Corral senior discount,
he makes him, yeah,
but
he
he
made, he
looks
made fun
young.
he made fun of his own age, but he looks like a guy who's in pretty good shape. But
Yeah,
also, I was sitting there thinking, like, as it was going on, and I was thinking, like, can you fucking believe that Chuck Schumer is still the minority leader, that he has not stepped aside yet? And my take is this: it's not that big a deal, right?
right.
It's a big deal in this moment. The political leaders need to inspire the rank and file to do something that's very uncomfortable,
Yep.
potentially dangerous,
Yep.
and tiring. which is get out on the fucking street, walk the streets, and in essence be antagonistic. Who the fuck wants to do that? You think I want to go do that on Saturday? Get a train in New York City, be jammed in with a bunch of people, walk down and have who knows what goes on with the NYPD? Who knows if it gets a little bit crazy? Not that it's going to be out of my control if it gets crazy, right? But if it does, it does, right? So it's a time where people are going to be asked to do hard things.
Yep.
And supposedly Chuck Schumer led the charge into Biden's office to tell Biden to do a hard thing, which is give up power. Which is the hardest thing for people who want power to give up power. No one gives up power easily.
Right.
So it's the same moment for Chuck Schumer should be giving up power. And if he's not willing to, there should be 10, 12, 20 Democratic senators calling him into a back office meeting and say, come on, Chuck, we don't have your back anymore. You're not, you got to do a hard thing right now because we're asking America to do a hard thing. Yep. You got to show that you're willing to do a hard thing. So senators have to be willing to have the hard conversation with Chuck Schumer. He's got to be willing to do the hard thing only because we need that. We need the symbolism of change, the symbolism of energy, the symbolism of the fight.
Great point. Great point, my friend. Yeah, man. All right, bro. Another exciting day over there in MAGA land. We got to keep an eye on it. So we're going to keep an eye on what's happening going towards Saturday. We'll keep an eye on the numbers at indivisible.org. Go to the website to find a protest near you.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if Trump's actions today actually rile up more people to protest because they're like, fuck, you're hurting, you're hurting us now. Like your kitchen table, you hurt our kitchen table.
Exactly.
If there's anything that we can get out of the next 48 hours, I hope that Trump's idiocy is something that just inspires more. Booker's vision and energy, along with Trump's idiocy, maybe anything that pushes more numbers to the street. So I think that'll be something to watch. Something we'll be talking about tomorrow. Whether we think that more rank and file citizens have been activated, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, buddy. Put a bow on.
Okay.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Talk to you tomorrow.
Peace.